begin. Good morning. I'm Scott Forsino, an associate broker for Real Brokerage LLC based in New York, New York. I put together a platform called PrimeRealEstate.pro for the purpose of enriching and educating those members of the real estate industry how to navigate and succeed in the new economy of buyer agent commission. Scott is a top pro. We launched this platform and opportunity together. Scott Einbinder, a real estate strategist and in the banking industry. And we have very many thoughts on how best lenders, buyers agents, and listing agents can thrive in the new, as Scott calls, the buyer agent environment, compensation environment. So good morning, Scott. We're ready to get our hands dirty.
All right. Absolutely. I really call kind of the new policy environment, which is kind of where we're at. So that's kind of where we are in the space, but how we label. But yeah, nice to see you, Scott.
Well, we are here after we talked about the lawsuit and how we got here. It's now early March 2025. There's much to learn, and we know that the circumstances are leading us towards decoupling commission. There's no more sharing, as you say. You're going to get into that, and we are here to equip those lenders, buyers agents, sellers agents to prosper within the new set of rules and the new paradigm. So, Scott, what do you say? I mean, all your travels, this is your open mic night. And here we go. What should lenders do to take care of listing agents and buyers agents? What training and how should they regard themselves inside this deal? What's their role?
So, in the mortgage business, in the lending community, you've got multiple sources of, let's say referral people, attorneys, financial planners, accountants. There's lots of referral channels in the lending space. But realtors, remain a very viable channel for referral opportunities. Buyers are influenced by what their realtor says, and they are influenced by the realtor's suggestions and recommendations. So it's a viable source of opportunity. There are some lenders and some loan officers that they don't even like getting realtor referrals because they feel they're working with so many people. It's hard to have consistency. But I always say that in the referral channel, at least in the realtor space, the question that you always have to ask yourself is, what is the value that you're bringing to your realtor partner? And for, decades and decades and decades, loan officers felt that their value to realtors was just to do a great job on the mortgage, to know the products, to know the guidelines, to have a lot of options. Another value proposition loan officers would say is that they know how to put deals together. They know how to help realtors, kind of negotiate and help things in problematic times. Good loan officers would sell their value as, listen, if something is going, sideways, I can step in and kind of help fix it, at least on the lending side, having solutions and options. Other value propositions that loan officers and banks have offered realtors is by doing kind of co-marketing agreements, offering training like what I do. They help them with their open houses and all those things that lenders have been doing for decades and decades and decades. However, there is a different segment of loan officers and lenders that provide all those things, but they provide something else as well. And this is the space that I navigate my lender clients to. It's bringing something of greater value into that partner relationship. And what I mean by that is actually bring them business. Now, one of the ways in which lenders have done that is they've done joint investments in lead generation. They will participate with them on Zillow leads or other kinds of leads. And lenders have feel, well, that's giving my realtor partners business, for lack of a better word. But what's happened is there's been a real wholesale shift in our industry, in the real estate industry specifically, where the manner in which buyer agents, because in the real estate space you have buyer agents and listing agents, buyer agents now have a completely new situation in front of them, where they now have to get their buyer to actually buy them first before they buy the property, right? These buyer agreements, and buyer agreements have been around for a long time. Buyer agreements in and of themselves are not new, but the compensation conversation regarding buyer agreements is very new. And really what we have here, whether realtors admit it or not, loan officers admit it or not, buyers really never knew what their buyer agent was earning on them in a transaction, right? Even though that buyer agent was representing them, even though that buyer agent was working for them, even though that buyer agent was there to win and fight and advocate for them, there was like an unknown as to what that buyer agent was actually earning to represent them, because the way the business was set up, that compensation, regardless of the fact that it wasn't transparent, it was paid in almost all cases by the seller, right? That's how it worked. But this new policy change has now changed that, where sellers now have the choice, right? Again, everyone makes the argument in the industry that the seller has always had the choice, even though it was proven in court that you could go to markets where 100% of the listings offered were offering a buyer compensation at a 2.5 or 3. There was very little visible choice, right? Even though everyone had the choice, no one would serve. But the point is that those sellers really were all being convinced and suggested to offer compensation. Well, now sellers, if it's being done correctly, now know that they have choices and they can offer no commission. They can offer a stated commission, and just like the way they used to, or they could say, listen, we're willing to offer compensation, but we're going to wait and see what the offer is. So sellers have kind of choices. The big thing is that the realtor sharing platform of commissions has been eliminated, right? Because many times the realtor would be the one kind of deciding of that sharing thing. Mm-hmm. So now you have a situation where, as a buyer agent, which is where most loan officers earn their opportunity from, they have the challenge of having to convince that buyer to not only sign the buyer agreement, which they have to do, but agree to their compensation. Not the compensation of what a seller is offering, but the compensation of what the buyer agent thinks their value is. Now, that is where the industry is shaking. And when I say the industry, the real estate industry. So buyer agents right now, under the current status, have not felt the big push, because a lot of listing agents are still convincing sellers to offer compensation. So buyer agents are still getting commissions from sellers, even though the buyer's agreeing to it in advance. They're still getting it. However, the needle is moving on that, and as more and more consumers understand what's happening, things are going to become more challenging. And buyers, they have another dynamic in their decision-making process, where if they, for whatever reason, don't agree with the compensation that the buyer agent's asking for, they can shop it. They could shop multiple agents for commissions that they're comfortable with, that they want to pay, or they can do what they call a dual agency, where they may not work directly with a buyer agent. They might go directly to a listing agent who can represent them as well in what they call a dual agency situation, which is legal in most states. There's a few states where it's dual agency isn't legal per se, but they have workarounds around that where it still takes a place. It's just called something different. So what does that mean for loan officers? It means that as a loan officer, your historical buyer agent referral source that you've been working with for a long time, they need much better skills and help in, number one, securing that agreement between the buyer agent and the buyer. And as a loan officer, there's an opportunity to help your agent in that conversation with the buyer at their buyer agency consult. So loan officers have that opportunity in front of them. On the other side, loan officers also have the opportunity to do what I'm suggesting, is to bring in another value-added benefit to their relationship. And what that might look like is not just helping your realtor sell the services to the buyer, but actually play a more significant role in helping realtors acquire listings.
That's why we're here.
So you think about it. You know, I'm a loan officer and I want to get my realtor referrals. and I could do a great job for my realtor and be known as a real problem solver. Or I could be a loan officer that's known as a problem solver, as a great loan officer, but I also play a major role in helping my realtor acquire listings and helping them in an effective way at these buyer consults. Which realtor you think might see who has more value? And that's really kind of my guidance to the lenders out there.
What should lenders do? I mean, I have so many of my own ideas. What should a loan officer do 9 in the morning with regard to sellers, FSBOs, listing agents?
Yeah.
What can
So basically, a loan officer, should do all the things that they're already doing to make them successful. But a loan officer should put on what I call their inventory hat, because at the end of the day, the most valuable commodity in this industry is the inventory, right? Is the listings. And a loan officer should be partnering up with their realtors in developing a system for acquiring listings. So that involves, one, searching for listings. Number two, how to approach. Three, how to converse. Four, how to deliver a world-class listing presentation. And number five, how to properly service that listing. So the loan officer, who typically was not involved in that process, they were a third party out on the perimeter, can be very, very interwoven into that process.
Mm-hmm. What about the strategies? What about contacting? I mean, I'm thinking a lot along the lines of introductions for sale by owner to listing agents or agents in the field. I'm also thinking about giving some ideas and strategies to the listing agents and how to structure deals, how to make a property more attractive.
Well, there's structuring deals is separate. I'm talking about acquiring the opportunity, right? So, as a loan officer, good loan officers will structure deals. Good loan officers, but this is all outside of that, right? It's really about the acquisition of the listing, about playing a role in helping that realtor acquire the listing. Because, in the real estate business, most realtors, the 1.5 million realtors, if that's the number still, the majority of the 1.5 million are either buyer agents or mostly buyer agents. It's a very small group of what we call pure listing agents. What's a listing agent? I'd say a listing agent is an agent where either all or most of their income comes from representing properties and sellers. It's a very small group, and it's a small group for a reason, because listing agents really are the group that have to create something out of nothing. They have to really sell themselves to the client, right? They have to get them to sign on the dotted line that they're worth a commission of X. Well, buyer agents now have to really do that on the buyer agency side. Like, a buyer agency agreement is really kind of the cousin to the listing agreement, right? You now have to get the buyer to get them to sign and not only pay that fee. Imagine a listing agreement where you went on a listing appointment and you sold all your value to a seller. And then you said to the seller, listen, Mr. Seller, the good news about my commission, you don't have to pay it. I'm going to get the buyer to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't hear that. Like, that doesn't happen, right? We don't have that. But I mean, why not? I mean, why not get the buyer agent? Why not get the buyer to pay for the listing fee? Why not, Scott? Why can't you're the seller? You're the seller. I'm the agent. And I said to you, Mr. Seller, my commission of 3% on your $700,000 house, I'm going to get the buyer to pay that commission. How would you feel about that?
I would love that. Thank you.
Love that. But it doesn't work that way, because you got the equity, the buyer doesn't. So what we have here is we have this system that's now been rocked, and it's now been shaken up to basically say whoever is representing who pays. Crazy concept, right?
And because it's my belief that buyers agents who are the chief referral source for lenders, have not operated exclusively in that arena. I mean, the numbers are probably negligible of buyers agents that were paid purely from their buyers when the system was never in place in that fashion. So now we're in that place. I think lenders should be very, very concerned that their referral partners are so challenged and have had no experience under the new policy environment. That's why it's your understanding, as we've discussed, that the lenders really must be
Right.
close.
So what should a loan officer do? A loan officer needs to be very, very acclimated to inventory. They need to do their research, partner with their realtor partner on analyzing the data within the MLS, knowing all about inventory, almost just like a realtor would. A good listing agent knows inventory. So as a loan officer, I need to learn about inventory, what it is, why it is, and how I can start soliciting it. Then the second step is develop a solicitation process with your realtor partners on how to approach these opportunities. And again, I have what I think are the 5 verticals, which are the FSBO, the expired, the short sale, the absentee owner, and the homeowner. Those 5 groups of potential sellers are really very, very opportunistic. And as a loan officer with your realtor partner, you can pursue solicitation of those 5 groups in a consistent and hopefully unique and innovative way to win the opportunity to get a listing appointment and maybe play an important role in helping that agent win that listing. Now, if you're a loan officer and you've helped that agent win the listing, there's a lot of good things you can do within that, because now any of the mortgage or any of the buyer opportunities that come to that listing, you as the quote financial partner can be involved in that assessment process and maybe earn an opportunity to win that mortgage if the buyer comes directly to the listing agent, which we see happening more and more. But even if the buyer is being represented by a buyer's agent, you as the loan officer can still play a role in vetting that pre-approval or vetting that situation. And there might be opportunities that come from that as well. But it's kind of that global experience. So because there are buyers now floating around that listing, and because you played a role in helping acquire it, you can earn all the opportunities that come around it as well.
Right. So you're really talking about some high level financial prospecting that the loan officer can do to introduce to realtors.
Well,
And
I wouldn't necessarily say high level financial. It's just sales 101, right? Good listing agents are good solicitors. They're good salespeople. They know how to prospect. I mean, the word prospect in the real estate business and even in the mortgage business is a very watered down term. Agents will say, well, listen, I just did a mailer. I sent out 1,000 letters and I'm prospecting for listings. I mean, it's a mailer, and yes, it falls under the definition of prospecting, but everybody does it. It's not really unique. The type of prospecting that I recommend is very much door-to-door prospecting. I believe it's very effective to be in the field, to be engaging directly with homeowners. And while that appears to be slower and moves at a slower clip, it's a lot more effective. I mean, I always say you can send out, 1,000 letters or speak to 5 people. What's more effective? It's going to be more effective to speak to 5 people. So those are the kind of physical activities that loan officers should be doing and engaging with their realtor in the field, prospecting for opportunities.
wow, it's powerful. And there's the digital part as well. There's Zillow, FSBOs. There's many opportunities that they could volunteer services as far as assisting a for sale by owner. They're all over the place in every county, and introducing realtors. I mean, that's a free.
Well, that's the whole idea. You see, when someone goes to sell a house, I often say every seller is a potential mortgage candidate, right? Because most of these people need a mortgage. So you don't have to approach FSBOs as a realtor. And by the way, if you're not licensed, you can't act as a realtor, but you can act as a loan officer. You can act and engage in the relationship with that FSBO. And then as a result of the conversation, if the loan officer can, be of guidance and assistance, well, making the introduction of their realtor partner to that FSBO. And if that realtor partner gets that introduction, gets the appointment, and gets the listing, they have nobody but the loan officer to thank for that opportunity. And that's what I call a real partnership relationship between mortgage and realtor. You're helping them acquire business. I mean, let's face it, a realtor, when they have a mortgage opportunity, they're referring a transaction to a loan officer. How often does a loan officer refer a transaction to a realtor? That's the big picture mindset. And most loan officers don't do it. Because again, the idea is my job as a loan officer is to do a great job on your transaction. What my suggestion is in the New World thing is that my job as a loan officer is to do a great job on your transaction and help bring you and refer you transactions.
Not to mention just easy, what I call networking. If I'm a loan officer, I'm going to introduce you to my clients, my friends, my local business owners, and my clients past and present. I mean, there's just more of a,
Well, a loan officer may only have so many. I'm talking about new business, right? So if I'm a loan officer and I know 8,000 people, I'm not going to introduce my 8,000 people to my 10 realtors. What I'm talking about is a loan officer pursuing new opportunities in the listing environment to help bring that to their realtor partners. And by the way, we talk about lenders, it doesn't have to stop there. It transcends over to title companies and any other third-party
home
company.
inspectors, home
That's
inspectors,
right. That's
home
right.
inspectors all have
That's right.
clients, and
Well,
all.
it's again, remember, it's not about their clients. It's loan officers going out and finding new clients in participation with their realtor partners. You know, if I'm a realtor and I want somebody to help prospect with me and they agree to do it, now you can say you're truly partners. You're partnering in the pursuit of new business.
Powerful. And Scott, that's one part. I mean, client acquisition, and what about client representation? This is the part that really gets me. We now live in an environment where the seller paying buyer agent compensation is, for now, optional. I think it's not going to happen any longer, but for now, it's optional.
Wait, where the sell? Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Where the seller makes a choice, it's no more broker to broker sharing, as you
Right.
call it. But
Right.
right now, as of today, the March 5th, 2025, before there's an injunction or government ban, so shall we say, what is your suggestion with that amount of money? If it's a $600,000 house, there's two and a half, three. We're talking about from $12,000 to $18,000 in that range.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on a lender strategizing,
Yeah,
collaborating?
yeah, absolutely. So if a seller is willing to kind of offer something to make their home more attractive, you know, one way and the way that everybody wants it to be is offer buyer compensation. Offer buyer compensation, and you know that's good. Even though, you know, there's no, there's no evidence that the more you offer, the more the seller's going to get to the house. But that's aside. But a lender, in participation with their realtor and seller, if they want to offer out some incentive, offer out a seller concession, offer out a rate buy down, offer out something that goes directly to the benefit of the buyer, right? So if I'm a buyer and there's a listing out there, and in that listing there's an offer that there might be a rate buy down available to me as a buyer. Well, now if I go ahead and buy that house, I might be looking at an interest rate that might be 0.5% less because the seller's contributing towards the mortgage rate buy down, as opposed to another listing that may not be offering it. So there are lenders should be very, very close to that process. And I think that every listing should be vetted and look at what financial opportunities buyers can be offered on every single listing.
Now, would you say that that's a completely fertile field? If there's 20 listings in your hometown, I think that no listing agents and no sellers are even contemplating pledging money, pushing across the table to make their home more
well, and
attractive.
again, you have to do it, you know, in a compliant way. But you know, you could say things to the effect that the seller will consider paying X, you know, up to a certain number, and it's always again based upon buyer qualification, based upon the terms and offers of the price. I mean, everything gets thrown into the pot. It's not an across the board, here's the money, no matter what. But that's what merchandising is, right? You have advertising and merchandising. And, you know, merchandising, it's an art, it's a science. You know, there are many things that we buy as consumers, right? We see an advertisement for something, we see an offer, you know, $50 off, a coupon, whatever. But there are conditions to it. Now, you know, as long as it's not deceptive and it is what it is, you know, that often plays a role in getting people into the store, getting them into the home, right? That all those things, that's exactly what our marketing system does as a country, right? We make all kinds of, buy 3 tires, get the 4th for free, you know, all those kinds of things you can do. Now, it may not apply. You may want certain tires where it doesn't apply. So as long as it's not a deceptive practice, you see very little ingenuity and creativity in the offering of opportunities or on the listing side. And that's kind of where the lender can play a role in that process.
So Scott, if you're a loan officer from a bank and I'm a listing
Yeah.
agent, brand new listing. I mean,
Right.
what would you? How could?
So here's one thing that I would do. So let's say you see a realtor who has a listing. It's on the market for $699. What I would do is I would take that listing, I would unpack it, and I would turn it into what I call the real money, right? Meaning that a $699 listing, if I'm a buyer, it's $699. I don't know, if my income supports it. So imagine you saw a listing and rather than it said $699, it was the listing and it said, this home is available to all buyers who earn an income of more than 80,000, or if you have $50,000, you turn it into what I call the money that people can relate to. So if I'm a loan officer, that's one way in which I could start approaching realtors with listings and start educating them and meet with them and say, listen, I see you're a listing agent, but I want to help market your listings in a particular way that might be more digestible to buyers. And let's come up with good incentives that we can give to buyers directly that might motivate them to come to you directly. And you might be in a position to handle both sides of the transaction, which now in many states, if we want to talk about income for a second, there were many states where a listing agent could not earn a commission from both sides. Now in many states, they can. So they can earn a commission being paid by the seller. They can also earn a commission and be paid by the buyer on that same transaction. So from a revenue opportunity for the realtor, it could be a real home run.
So example of yours, if I could see on watching the game and I see a Jeep is $369 a month for a lease, that's pretty common. So this house for $699 might be 10% down, 20% down, and then figure taxes a certain amount per month at the rate. But it was my thought of one thing we discussed before. If a seller determines that they'd like to lower the monthly payment for a prospective buyer, it could be less because
something like this, imagine you saw a listing and it said something like this: if you earn $83,000 or more, this house could be yours. What's the price? If you earn whatever. So again, this is kind of, I might see a house for $699 and not think I could afford it, but hey, I know I make 80 grand. That's a good reason maybe call. So it's just an example of ingenuity. You don't see many new things in this industry. Everything looks the same. If you go and look at, even, any kind of advertisements of listings and whatnot, they all are basically, they look identical. And even the verbiage is identical. Even the property descriptions of these things are identical, right? It's like everyone's now going to ChatGPT and, putting their property in there and it's spitting out but it all sounds the same. So the guidance is, what are you doing as a loan officer that is significantly different than other loan officers, right? Are you doing exactly what other good loan officers do? Okay, so you're now equal to other good loan officers. But what's going to make you different, unique, and special? So, again, that's one idea. But going back to what we said earlier, Scott, it's, as the lender, the role of the lender has never been really to assist your realtor in acquiring those opportunities.
It's really, so you're saying it's been really a passive approach. Do a good job and wait for referrals. That's what I've experienced.
Do a good job and wait for referrals. That's exactly right. I'm a reliable mortgage source.
Right.
Great. That's what you should be.
And you're suggesting,
what else are you doing?
You're suggesting taking a much more active role and bringing the listing agent aboard your essentially financial planning. And another element you mentioned to me before is, before a seller was saddled with two commissions. Now one is optional, and we discussed that maybe all or some of that commission that is not paid by the buyer's agent to the buyer's agent any longer could be used to push across the table for closing costs or buy down the rate. Now your house would have a lower price, a lower down payment, lower closing costs, a lower monthly payment, be more attractive.
I mean, again, if a buyer had a choice of getting money for a buy down the rate or pay their agent, right? Let's say there's two choices. And, an agent would say, well, yeah, that rate buy down might be good money, but hey, listen, if you don't have a good agent, you're not going to get the house. And my answer is, how do you know?
Mhm.
Just like I told you when we started, if I'm a buyer who deals with a listing agent and I win the listing, I got the house, right? So we can't use scare tactics as ways to justify value, right? That's kind of what's happening in the real estate space. They're kind of scared. I mean, maybe it's a strong word, but suggesting to a seller to offer out a buyer agent compensation, I strongly recommend it. Well, what's the implication if I don't do it? Right? What's the subtle message that we're trying to put there? What do you think, Scott? What subtle message are agents giving to sellers if they don't offer out compensation? What's the message you think that the industry is putting in front of sellers?
That the house won't be shown; it'll be left alone. Right. And I know you mentioned that because this is, we're teaching lenders in this instance where lenders now know that amount of money is somewhat in controversy, and
yeah, it's on the table. It's on the table to be dealt with. And again, even when agents say that, well, listen, if you don't offer out a commission, you're not going to get it shown. What they're admitting to, and this is the craziest thing, when a realtor says that, they are admitting that realtors don't have ethics.
Oof.
It's an admission, because what they're saying is that if a buyer wants to come see your listing and you're not giving compensation, that the agent's not going to bring them to the listing. That's unethical.
Right.
Commission, if a buyer wants to see a house and an agent steers them away or puts 50 others in front of them before, it's unethical. It's an admission that agents are unethical. It's almost like saying, listen, you don't want to, you don't want to, if you have a store, you gotta tag everything with an alarm because people are thieves and they'll just, you can't. So to me, again, we have to lock on. If I'm a loan officer, if I'm a mortgage company, look for what your partners need. They don't need another good loan officer. What they need is someone to help them prospect for listings.
Right.
What they need and want.
Well, like we say, that buyer agent compensation, the 2.5, or 3% could be used as for closing cost assistance, so that the lender is they're in a challenge to change the listing agent and the seller's mind, because traditionally they offered, now they commission, now they don't. So you're really describing the opportunity for a loan.
Imagine this, and imagine this: a buyer agent calls on a listing, and the listing agent says, "Hey, is there any commission?" And by the way, that whole asking if there's a commission, that might be deemed not legal soon too.
Yeah, right.
A lot of attorneys for the real estate businesses said, listen, you've been told you can't advertise it, but you can say it. Like, it's almost like weird thing. You can't advertise commissions, but you can tell people. So some attorneys are saying to their brokerages, don't even say it, because just simply saying a commission can be liable. But let's leave that on the table for a second. But imagine you said to a buyer's agent, listen, yes, we're going to be offering, we have two choices for your buyer to make. We're going to send this over to you. The buyer can either choose to use the 2% for your commission, or they can choose to use the 2% for a rate buy down.
Right.
You can have them choose.
Now, exactly. Now, what you just gave, I think, is an amazing pearl of wisdom, because I have never heard any lender ever say those words ever to anyone, even their best friend or their mom. So in this case, you basically liberated lenders from the shackles of having to be picked. Pick me. I show up at all the events. I buy the donuts. I buy the bagels. I'm here no matter what. Call me at midnight. This is something that you're now educating lenders for the first time to say, hey, listen, you may not know, you may not even agree that paying a buyer's agent commission is optional. However, there's your client to whom you have a fiduciary duty could really benefit greatly if they were given that choice. And look at the different scenarios when the buyer picks the closing costs and goes to
Yeah,
direct the listing agent.
exactly. So the idea is that a lender has a really unique opportunity. And again, I say lenders, but it's other third parties to really bring in this executable. This is really getting involved with the fabric of your realtor. This is now where you're no longer just, texting and calling your agent and updating them and sending them stuff. You're physically together. You're physically together in the field. And while everything has gone so virtual, right? Everything, this whole, everyone's, all, worked up about AI and what that's going to do. And I'm sure that's going to have an impact on every industry. But right now, there is tremendous value in a live interactive experience with your realtor partner pursuing inventory. And it would be hard to find a reasonable agent that would not entertain that pursuit together.
I completely agree. To me, this I've been really on this case since the beginning, and I've been talking to lenders from the beginning, and lenders are woefully unexposed. And the problem is their only source of information is the realtors who are
right. And it's understandable right now because a lot of lenders are not being drawn into the commission issue currently because right now the seller concession, there are agents that are trying to include the buyer agent commission in the seller concession, right? So rather than the seller concession going to closing cost or rate buy down, it's going to the commission. Now, that is changing. I mean, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac issued a memo, 6-8 months ago that the buyer agent commission is not an interested party contribution. So while the seller can offer to pay it as a concession, whether it's financeable or not is a different thing. And that is some lenders are allowing it, some lenders are not. More and more lenders, I think, are going to start to realize that the concession that includes the commission is what does that have to do with the value? And they're gonna kind of pull that out. Right now, we know that that Fannie and Freddie allow certain closing costs to be financed, right? Attorneys' fees, title insurance. But the commission, which is often a big number, right? We're talking, 2-3% of. So if you're just, nowhere on the appraisal do we see a line for a buyer agent commission.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So where's it all going to land? I don't know. I wouldn't be too optimistic, but it doesn't even really matter. The point is that if I'm a loan officer and I want to create more value, let me scratch that. I'm a good loan officer. And I want to create more of a deeper relationship with my realtor partners, lean into what they need and what they desperately want. And if you have the skill set and you have the resources to put these, when I mean resources, I don't just mean financial resources. I mean time resources. That's where you want to maybe start reallocating some of your money. If you're paying, tens of thousands of dollars a year to be in some magazine that sits on a coffee table that nobody reads, do it, or you can take some of those resources and go out there and start pursuing opportunities with your realtor partners and, and start helping them do something that could mean tens of thousands of dollars to them in commission. I mean, think about it. If you're a loan officer and you help your realtor get one listing in the year, that could be $30,000 that you are legally and ethically and putting right in their pocket.
Mm-hmm. Well, Scott, you've also been motivating many for many years. This is what you're describing. I'm thinking myself doing this. Requires a lot of courage when all the loan officers are going left and doing all the donuts and bagels and coffee and being around and hanging around and just pursuing maybe low producing agents. And you're suggesting doing much less of that, maybe none of that, and taking steps and activities towards generating business, what you call money making activities.
Right. I don't do CE credit. I do MM credit. Right. Exactly.
It's MM credit. When a loan officer is met with resistance, say I'm all set, or they're not really getting a willing audience. I mean, what do you tell them? keep, how do they push through the agents that are not, and not,
Well, what they're trying to do is they're trying to, again, loan officer, a lot of loan officers that solicit realtors, what they're offering to give the realtor's already heard that offer 20 times that month, right? They're selling the same bottle of water, right? It's the same thing. So, if you're wanting to, do business, the first thing you have to do is you have to look at your realtor landscape. I mean, there's a big statistic floating around out there. It doesn't get a lot of press, but somewhere around 70% of realtors did not do a transaction in 2024. That's a pretty startling number. So when you look at an office and you're sitting in a sales meeting with realtors and you think that 70% of these people didn't do a transaction, a lot of these loan officers are soliciting that 70%.
Absolutely.
They're taking them out to dinner, they're lunches, they're doing marketing flyers, they're spending a lot of time on that 70%. Well, what I would say is the first thing is take someone in that 70% and try to help them become a listing agent. Help them. They would love your help. And now not everyone in that 70% is going to be able to do it, but there are some who want to. Then of the 30% that are doing business, how could we help them do more business? Simply doing a great job on the loan isn't enough. It's just not enough. It's expected. Realtors expect the loan officer to do a great job. You can't say my value-added benefit is doing a great job when you're giving people what they expect. Providing value-add is giving people what they don't expect. And I can tell you, very few realtors expect a loan officer to help them acquire listings. And by the way, why do we talk about listings? Because we're back to the new way of doing business. Listings have always been important in the real estate business. But effective 2023 and 2024, they went from important to critical. And, that's kind of, as a third-party provider, let me lean into what is happening. Now, again, loan officers, a lot of them, just like the realtors, they're just not connecting to what's happened. And because in many cases, they don't feel that there's been a change because sellers are still paying, they're not changing. It's changed. Whether or not you're seeing it yet, it's not there. It's like when they changed the speed limit on a highway. It takes a little while before everybody realizes what it is, right? That's why the cops don't give tickets right away, right? They changed the speed limit. It was 55. They lower it to 45 because it's a higher dense area. For a month or two, people that have been driving that road, they just don't realize it. Now, if they're driving 55 in the 45, you can't say nothing's changed. It's changed, but you haven't felt it yet. And that's kind of what is happening with this thing. Because you haven't felt it doesn't mean it hasn't changed.
And that's a great point, because I've spoken to lenders constantly, and realtors say nothing. It's business as usual. We had a written MLS. Now we have a verbal MLS. Yes, I'll pay. Yes, I'll pay. Yes, I'll pay. So there's, as long as sellers pay, but you say the needle is moving on sellers not paying, and
completely.
And lenders, title companies, and maybe home inspectors more than anyone else, should be very, very concerned. This is what I say, and I get shouted down all the time, that if the rules have changed and the practice has changed and the results will change soon enough, lenders should take this opportunity really, really seriously to enrich relations with realtors and keep them capable. I mean, without the training you provide, just one more thing. I mean, would you touch on the training that you provide as opposed to what we see the boards and the association?
Yeah. Well, again, I train both the real estate and banking sectors, right? I teach the realtors how to, acquire listings, how to prospect outside their sphere of influence. Most realtors are taught referrals. That's true. However, there's more opportunity outside your sphere of influence, and most agents don't pursue that, right? They work their sphere of influence, but if your sphere of influence doesn't have anything for you, that day you're out of business. When you go outside your sphere, There's always a FSBO, an expired, a short sale. There's always a landlord. There's always a homeowner out there that you can meet. So that's what I train on. I train realtors on how to earn listing opportunities outside their sphere of influence in unique and progressive ways. It is nothing to do with the way it used to be. It's you would, in my training, you're never knocking on the door of a FSBO, even suggesting you have a buyer. In my way of doing things, when it comes to a expired listing, you're never saying to the seller, "What do you think the realtor did wrong?" Like all those antiquated. So I'm very progressive on the real estate space. On the mortgage space, what my training is to train the loan officers and the lenders how to create these new partnership relationships with realtors, how to bring in not only new and progressive education in acquiring listings, but also how to execute on that with them in the field. So I turn loan officers and lenders into much, much more effective prospecting partners for listing.
I think that's exactly what's needed today, because the book "Who Moved My Cheese," the entire wheel of cheese has been moved, and we don't even know where it went. So with
again, you're dealing, again, and I saw your interview with the agent who did who was the realtor that represented Sitzer, right, the one that started it all.
Sure.
And what we saw in that particular conversation was, and again, he is a very successful listing agent in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
Very successful. But what I found interesting was his admission of the arrogance of the industry.
That's his accusation. He really feels strongly that the arrogance of the local brokers who are
right. So here is an industry person, and by the way, there's many of them. This is the industry, and there's a lot of successful in the industry that are like, wait a minute, what have we done? Our whole relationship with the consumer, right? I mean, the things that, and if you unpack the case and the flowing of it and the whole 9 yards, how the industry reacted. I mean, what industry goes after consumers? What industry tries to scare consumers, right? And again, what he said, which I loved, was rather than talking about, more ways to do a better job and more ways to be better, everyone focused on my commission. It's commission. It's all about the money. It wasn't about anything else. And I thought that was very telling. I see it all the time, but it was interesting to see that.
Yeah, he told it like it is, and he was a top pro, and he was really, really disappointed at the reaction. And look, as realtors go, these other entities go. I've connected them since I started in 1997.
Yeah.
Lenders go, inspectors go, title goes in most of the country. Even lawyers go, and insurance goes. Movers, stagers go, as far as realtors go. If realtors are now in the position they're in, where even if we're wrong and you're crazy and I'm ridiculously out of my mind, buyers agents have to have this agreement signed. And if and when they're unable to, what will lenders, referral partners do? That's the part I'm just
listen, I think as far as the buyer agency industry, I don't think it's going away. It could change. It could become more of a commoditized situation. It could be something where, it's a almost like a transactional service to some degree. I mean, nobody really knows, and I don't want to even profess here to know. All I know is whenever you open up a market and make it transparent and you give consumers information and choice, the competitive spirit will be on. And you're going to have buyer agents that will continue to maintain a 2 or 3% number. You will have buyer agents who will decide they're happy to work for 1%, $500, $99. And the industry, and what's so interesting is that as soon as you hear other people are going to maybe do it for, you get what you pay for, you're going to get a low quality. That's always the go-to. The go-to is, it's going to be terrible. Just like, years ago, somebody said, oh, listen, if you buy things online, you're not going to get what you pay for. You're going to get robbed. You're not going to be able to return it. Nobody's going to buy anything with a company that sounds like the name of a jungle.
No, definitely
no
not.
one's going to do it. No one. People want to go into the store. They want to meet the owner. They want to be able to shake their hand. It'll never happen. And again, whenever there's a thing, the natural instinct of most people, it's to fight it, and in some cases go negative. I say, look for the opportunity. There's always opportunity in change. There's opportunity everywhere, but when change is happening, that's the move. That's the time. And so many loan officers are sitting there just doing business. I was in a mortgage company's office the other day, and they were sitting there in front of their computers. They were updating their CRMs. They were sending out some kind of, goofy flyer. They were getting ready to host a first-time home buyer seminar that night. And I'm looking around here, and I said to myself, this is the exact same thing I was doing in 1989.
Wow.
Everything that was happening there. And all the LOs were there. And I went up to one of the LOs and I said, why don't you go out and go knock on some doors with a realtor partner and maybe help her get a listing? And he looked at me and he says, Scott, so what's my job to do now? I got to now get realtors listings? Seriously?
Wow.
And I said, yeah. What else are you doing? And whatever's happening in this room right now is happening in 1,000 offices right now. We could duplicate this scene 1,000,000 times. I saw a loan officer, go on social media the other day. Basically, nicely lit, suit, on all the reasons why he's a great loan officer. I'm reliable, I'm honest, I'm trustworthy. I know how to make things happen. I'm good in if things are blowing up. This basically this, plea of why I'm so good. And I said, okay, great. Not every transaction is a blow up nightmare scenario.
Most aren't.
But you could take that loan officer and put another face on it. There's many loan officers who are good at that. If I'm a realtor, I've got the choice of 4 or 5 people who can do exactly that. I got choices, man. I don't need you for that. How many of these loan officers are going out there and pursuing an economic opportunity benefit for me?
That's the point. None.
Very few. I mean,
Right.
My orbit does, but the ones that do it, I mean, there are LOs that, I've been fortunate enough to work who, think about this, they are so effective at giving listing opportunities to realtors. Realtors call him and say, how can I do business with you? Now, if you're a loan officer, you don't get this phone call.
No.
When was the last time a loan officer got a phone call from a realtor? Hi, I heard you provide listing opportunities for realtors in my local market. How can I work with you? And you know what the loan officer says? I'd love a chance to work with you. Let's do this. I will set up an interview for you. I'll interview you. You come to my office, and I'm going to interview you. Bring your resume, bring references, bring your listing presentation. And when you come to my office, and if you go through my interview process and you meet my qualifications for an opportunity, love to bring you into my orbit. Love to bring you into my ecosystem. And imagine a realtor shows up to your office dressed in a suit with their briefcase and their resume, and they sit there and they are now applying to do business with a loan officer.
Right.
That's the business I'm in.
That's where it's going to go, because there are people that are going to entities that will put time and money, work within the social sciences, have those relationship with borrowers, and then need realtors to perform their services. I think it's going to be a flip, a man bites dog in limited instances. Small sample.
Listen, if you're a loan officer and it's Friday afternoon at 1:00 and you want to set up a meeting, a quality meeting with a good producer, call them up on the phone and say, listen, we've never worked together, but here's what I do. I am completely focused and dedicated. Listen, I do a great job like everybody else, but who cares? But not only do I do a great job, I have a program and a process to help you acquire listings. In this new policy environment where listings are kind of important, would you entertain a conversation with me to discuss that? Because I'd like to meet with you. I'm interviewing realtors who I can bring into my system. The realtor that says, no, I don't want to do that, don't worry about it. They're probably not going to be here anyway. Even the realtor that has the deepest relationships with other loan officers, they will entertain that meeting, right? Mm-hmm. And while that other loan officer who they've known for 12 years does an amazing job on loans, calls them back in 3 seconds, does everything amazing as a loan officer, what they probably are not doing is driving economic opportunities, new economic opportunities. Simply closing the loan of the purchaser I gave you. Mm-hmm. You didn't bring me new money. You just preserved the money that I made. But bringing me new business is a whole different story.
Right. And one of the part of business development is actually breaking up existing relationships. Of course, the successful listing agent.
I'm not breaking up anything. As a loan officer, I didn't break a thing. All I did is I provided my realtor partner with a better solution, a better economic solution. And that's what it works like. If you're a builder and a supplier, and all of a sudden another quality supplying item comes in at a lower fee or a better solution, it doesn't even have to be about the money, but helps you in some way, you're going to go there. So, I think sometimes loan officers get overconfident and, get lackadaisical, and, we kind of take our realtor relationships for granted. Can't do that. Every day you've got to provide new and invigorating value to your realtor partners. And if you do that, you'll find yourself on the right side of history with your business.
Mm-hmm. I know you deliver that. And in my promotion of this training and your coursework, I always explain to lenders that not only is Scott capable and this platform does achieve its goals, I let them know that really it's more of a process of endorsing this approach, not so much just not a revolutionary approach, but endorsing.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's risk. I don't mean to cut you off, Scott. I'm sorry.
And I'm saying that on the other end, it's not, we don't leave you alone. If, let's say, some lender would say, listen, I want to learn from Scott and pick 25 agents to share this training with, how to be a better listing agent, be a better buyer's agent. We work with those agents themselves and remind them.
So let me give you I'll give you a kind of a reflective story, because hopefully loan officers are listening to this. I had a mortgage client of mine who called me up one day and they said, Scott, we don't know if spooking agents to become listing agents is a good strategy, right? Like, you're kind of like this way, and we don't know if that's good if you're spooking them, because that's, and I heard what he was really saying is that, listen, we don't want to go against what is happening right now. If we start pushing that narrative, maybe some realtors are going to get upset with us, right? Because, for some reason, when you talk about this, it becomes controversial. Like, talking about a new policy somehow is controversial. The days of litigating it are over. There are many who still want to litigate it. It's terrible. It's horrible. I mean, there are agents that sit around, and loan officers, they spend all time talking about how terrible it is. Listen, it is what it is. Let's just deal with it, right? So I heard that, and I said, listen, I think spooking is a strong word. If being passionate about something and wanting to strongly encourage. I mean, I believe that if you don't get some of these listing agents doing more business, or some of these buyers agents into the listing way of doing business, they're going to be out of business, if you don't help them get listings. So I started thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? If I, in fact, every now and then, which I don't, but every now and then spook an agent to become a listing agent, that's good. I'm happy that I did that. I'm glad that I did that, because the other side of it is, let's just, not be too, if you get there, you get there. If not, that's okay. I mean, I don't know. To me, leadership is taking a stand that you believe in, and giving the tools to get there. Listen, I wasn't spooking people. I don't spook people. I give them a path on how to get there, right? There's one thing to say, don't go through that door, or say, listen, if you go through that door, I'm going to help you get through the door. I'm going to walk you through it. There's nothing to be afraid of. Let me help you. So if you, as a loan officer, you spook or inspire or whatever you want to call it to get an agent over to the listing side of the arena, or help them better with their execution of opportunity, you've done the greatest thing for them, and they're going to thank you. You know how many realtors thank me for shaking them up and being passionate about it and not being lackadaisical. Many of them tell me their broker wasn't even doing it. The broker wasn't even telling me, but you pushed me to do it. That feels good. And it's not just about feeling good. It's all those economic benefits that happen as a result of that. So in the lending space, that is the clear opportunity that exists.
Sure, the status quo is not your friend. All the pitfalls remain. Innovation is required. I don't understand how we could have the United States government and the relevant courts of law putting us on this path, and all of that means nothing. It goes against my logical line of reasoning, where all of this bandwidth and ink and people with various positions in the government and the court system and in our own organization, all of this was not, Scott. This was all just wipe it away. It's so we're here now.
So I think that, again, the opportunity for loan officers, and I say the ones that have a progressive mindset, the ones who know how to shift and move and adapt and change, this is home run city. It's never been better. I mean, it's never been better. There's never been this significant change in the business for decades and decades. So for the right loan officer and the right lender and the right mortgage company, if you seize the opportunity, you'll be there. If you just want to kind of sit back and wait, see what happens, I mean, I get that too, but you'll never be at the front of the pack sitting back and waiting. Although, maybe it will be. Some people say, well, let other people fail first. I don't know. You can't, that sometimes, says, well, what does that say about your own level of confidence? So I don't think anybody can make the argument that the relationship between lenders and real estate agents, those are very important relationships. But if I'm a loan officer and I'm, looking down the horizon here, I know that we're probably going to be in this elevated interest rate for environment. I don't think the refinance market's going to be roaring back anytime soon, although who knows? As a loan officer, you've got that in your theoretical back pocket that if rates do drop, I'm going to get business that way. But if not, how do I maintain not just consistency in the purchase market, but how do I raise and do more units, more business? Sure. If you want to do more things, more business, you got to do more things. If you want to have a different income, you got to do things different. It can't be the same old, same old. If you're waiting for the market to bail you out, I don't know. Now you're waiting, not creating. I think that's a tactical mistake.
Exactly. Well, I mean, this is fantastic regarding lenders, Scott. I mean, what insight? I know that lenders and title and home inspectors around the country are going to find this value, finding opportunities for listings with realtors and creating and enhancing relations. Shall we shift to listing agents?
Let's do this. What we can do now. You'll edit this out, obviously. At this point, how do you think that was? Was that accomplish what you were looking for?
Encouragement. I mean, listen, that's what I consider to be insight. What you mentioned, both the mindset and the practical approach,
and I think some of that, Scott, should be edited. I mean, I don't. And guys, by the way, before you put anything out, just
Of course.
Let me see it beforehand, which I know you'll do. But what I do think is I would edit that, Scott. And I think that there were some, I think there should be an editing component to it. I don't think it should go as long as we did, and maybe isolate some certain clips. I would do that. I think to just have it be,
You definitely review it. It's your input. I'm going to do it myself. The part in the beginning, your anecdote is going to be the story about the people who bought with the listing agent.
Okay.
Separate entity, because it's
let's do that. Let's see what that one looks like, Scott, and then we'll do the other two, together. But let's get that one done. Let's see it. Let's unpack it, and then maybe we'll have ideas where we do the next two. We'll have some perspective.
The buyer's agent from last week. We're 2 out of 3 right now.
Right.
So all that's left is the listing agent. But I'm going to work with. I'm going to watch this.
Okay.
We'll send you the raw, uncut. Listen as you will. There's not much fluff. There really was. It was.
Yeah. But again, what I would do is that I think that again, if you if you could watch the whole thing. I mean, I know that there's some things to pull out of there. Just whatever it looks like. Just send me what you want to send out, and then we can take it from there. We can always clip it up from there. But let me take a look at that.
So Sophie's listening. So Sophie, that first amusing anecdote that Scott gave about the contact of his.
And we'll take out my profanity, which I apologize, Sophie.
That was only 1 little second. We'll take that out. And then the rest we'll send Scott raw and uncut. But something, I think that people need this type of, I don't want to say conversational, but this narrative. That's the right word. The right narrative. They're hearing. And I believe that there's an enormous market for lenders to be told things in no uncertain terms and be given this instruction. This is sellable. And the last part is, which I think is your coup de grace. You love the listing agent part. I mean, this is what everyone, this is what the listing agent is more so what going to pass on. So we're here.
Yeah. I mean, listen, no doubt about it. But like I said, the lender opportunity is pretty substantial. As well as the title opportunity, very substantial. And, that's it. And I think that, again, it was funny. One of my clients this morning called me and she went on a listing appointment. She basically, there was another agent who she knew who knew this homeowner, right? And the home wasn't in the market of this other agent. So he called my client to do the list, to get the listing. But they went together. So it was this individual who was outside the market, and it was my client who was in the local market because the seller wanted an agent in the local market. You follow me? Mm-hmm. So the referral was an agent far away, so when the agent went on the listing appointment, it was my client. It was the other agent who wasn't going to be on, but who knew the seller, and then the seller. And so she called me this morning and she said she did not get the listing. And she shared with me the text message that the agent sent her because he's very upset that the seller did not get. Now, the seller was interviewing 8 realtors, which is crazy. So when I said to her, I go, why? So in the text message, the agent said, when you told the homeowner that the commission was only 3.5%, and you weren't encouraging them to pay out 2%, I thought that was a huge mistake. Because now again, this guy is not my client. He's the typical mentality. He goes, and I'm telling you, this seller, he knew. So I said to the agent, I go, during the listing presentation, did the seller go back and forth with you on that? Did the seller say, listen, I think it's a big mistake if you don't offer? And she said, not at all. Now, the reality is when we get listings, it's all because of us, right? When we lose listings, it's the same reason, right? We can't, everyone always finds excuses onto why they don't get something, right? Oh, it's because the other agent was charging less. Maybe it was because, for whatever reason, that homeowner was not connecting with both of them. Right? Mm-hmm. Could be, right? Mm-hmm. Interviewing 8 people. And when I said to the agent, I go, tell me about the meeting. She says, well, when the husband and wife sat down, after 4 minutes, the husband was not even at the table. He was walking around. Didn't even listen. Just the wife was listening. I go, was the wife the decision maker? Just doubtful. She We kept looking for him. So it didn't. So it sounded to me like, but again, the reaction was the reason you didn't get the listing is because you were going to not offer a commission. You know,
And
it's
so
just
that
baked in.
is so steeped in the old way.
It's so deep. It runs so deep.
And so I wonder in that case, why wouldn't, and I'm doing this myself, why wouldn't it be good news? The law changed, you double your profit.
That's exactly what we said. Got great news for you. You as the homeowner normally were burdened with paying both sides, probably landing somewhere between 5 and 6. The good news is you only have to pay 3 or 3.5. If you want to pay more, you can do so, but wait and see until the offer comes in, and then you might want to pay 10. It's that good, but wait and see. Makes sense. I mean, to a logic, it's like common sense, right?
That's why I mentioned the C word before, courage, where I said, you are comfortable. I know Scott Einbinder doesn't care what anyone thinks, but
that's not totally true. I do care. I care what my mother thinks. I care what my
okay, but I'm saying if someone differs on a real estate perspective than yours, you won't lose any sleep over it.
No, I don't lose sleep, but I mean, there's other perspectives. But I say, listen, if you have another perspective for me, make your argument. You know, when I sit and listen to agents try to pound on the table, you know, they say, well, if you don't pay a commission out, you're going to make less money. I just have a very simple answer. Prove it.
Well, I asked a great buddy of mine, my fraternity brother, the guy I bought and sold homes with in New York, Long Island, the city, and so on. He said to me, well, our office, he's with a Keller office. And when this started, maybe a year or so ago, he told me that the main focus, their training, you ready for this? The training he was experiencing was explaining to sellers how valuable paying buyer's agent commissions are. And I'm like, isn't that the opposite? Wouldn't someone from...
Let me ask you this, and this is another rhetorical question. Because buyer agents want sellers to pay them, is that an admission that you don't think you're worth it?
Of course. Or you just don't want to try. You may think you're worth it under that set of circumstances.
But it's just a big picture. Like, because there's just this whole, by me saying, seller, you have to pay a commission, aren't we also saying that these buyers know they can't get it from the buyer? That it's almost an admission that the buyer agent doesn't have that.
It is. What we're really saying, Scott, in a bigger sense, is we just want to close this thing. We all want to get paid. We all want everyone to be happy. That money that I said this to you once, you didn't like it. The money that we're going to pay is all monopoly money. You didn't earn it. So just pay it and let's just
I disagree. I think that, let me ask you a question. When you buy a stock at $3 and it goes to $8, did you earn it? Absolutely. You had the risk. Because that stock could have gone to 1.
No, I know you disagree. I said to you once, I'm just giving you what I believe to be the prevailing wisdom. We're realtors spending other people's money because you didn't go to work and save in a coffee can or an IRA or anything. So what my friend is telling me is they're training. Just let's get it done. It's monopoly money. It keeps the industry going, and no one's going to miss it. And
realtors think that because real estate goes up in value and the equity grows, in and of itself, it's an easy target for the money.
Yes.
Right? When a buyer has to write it out of their savings account or their checking account, it's different than coming out of,
the deal.
Passive equity accumulation. Right?
And my friend Mark Seiden that I introduced you to, that's a big point of his. He's like, money in or money out? Money I got to go pay for gas right now is money out. Money out of closing to tip the title closer, it's not money out. It's like just.
But he was in the camp of offering, if I remember correctly. He still believed that offering has a benefit.
But no, it's distinct. He doesn't. He thinks that offering is obligating. He thinks that he's okay with that being a negotiating term.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
Ending yourself right off.
No, that's the thing. I mean, the big transition is, and we're seeing brokers, listen, it's the end of the day, it's the seller, and the one who really needs to watch this video are consumers. Because if I'm a homeowner and I'm thinking of putting my house on the market, if I interview 3 realtors who all are giving me the same narrative, You have to pay, you have to pay, you should pay, we encourage you to pay. That's what I'm hearing. But if I get lucky enough to hear another perspective, I can now,
Yeah. Okay. Like kind of like a Ramsey or a Susie Orman or something like that.
yeah, I could really kind of unpack that, and I can now put myself in a position of strength. Because let me tell you something. If, let's say, you're on my listing appointment and I'm a seller and you want my listing and I'm willing to pay you a 3%, and I decide as the homeowner that I'm not paying a commission, there's no way that the realtor is going to walk from that listing. They're not going to do it.
You're right. You're right. And that's a position. I mean, I would love to be that consumer advocate, that thing.
They're
That's
not going to walk. They ain't walking.
You're right. You're right. And listen,
They
I
are
hope
not walking away. And you know what? I just, as a seller, took that 2% or 3%, and I can either keep it, I can offer it out as a buy down. Maybe I offer out 1% as a buy down. I'm in control. I can decide what I want to do with that money. And I think it's